getting a feeling of deja vu? I am. Anyway, there we are. I think this is now Mark 3. Lots of 3D printing. Almost, when I'm looking at it, thinking, well, should I just 3D print some wings? I think they might break apart, or they'd be very thick and heavy. Anyway, so we're moving along. Nice curve on there. I've got to sort of blend this in, but I don't think that'll be too much of an issue. I think next we'll be making that frame up. We're bright and breezy on a Saturday morning. Cup of coffee. It's time to get on with the car. And I gotta say, when I opened the garage this morning and see it looking like that, I think I am making progress here, you know. It does sort of start looking a bit like a car, and it's certainly starting to get the it's starting to look like what's in my head, which I guess is a pretty good thing. Building the frame on the inside of this is the side pod thing. I'm just putting a bit of triangulation in top to bottom to hold it all in place. It will have a side on here as well, which will sort of kind of extend the triangulation. I think I'll probably put another one in near the front. It doesn't matter so much on the driver's side, because other than maybe that radiator for a heater, it's not going to have much in here. But I think, yeah, we just have a bit of triangulation on that one just to keep that nice and firm. After quite a few hours of sweat and tears, I think I'm getting there. Now, the side, obviously this section here I did sweeping up. I haven't done enough, so I'm going to have to put a little section in there. I don't think that'll be too much of a problem. This whole thing is going to be covered in wrap, so as long as I do it fairly neatly, it shouldn't show through. And I need to just cut. Can you see the metal there? So where I've done bends, I've sort of slit every 2 centimeters, so I need to do the slit a little bit further there, so that slope, make it a little bit more gradual, and the same on this side, just kind of graduate it a bit. But I think we're getting there. Where this is obviously fairly wobbly at the bottom, I'm going to 3D print a bit that will clip on, so it will be, I'll do a drawing. It's probably the first time I've ever done a drawing, isn't it? So if that's the side pod bottom there, what I'm going to do is have a little bit that would just go like that, probably only 10, maybe 20 mil in. Hopefully that'll help keep the air from bleeding out underneath, but most importantly it will stiffen it that way as well. And that's going to get, I've ordered some Kevlar tape, so that will get covered in Kevlar, as it's quite low down. I might also try and think of a way of doing that I can actually have another section inserted. No, I'm not going to do that now. So I'm thinking of full-on ground effects here, which one day might be a thing. But I need to keep things simple at the moment. So I've added a little section to the back of there, so I'm just going to offer this up to the car now. Hopefully this is now going to be ready for using as a buck. I've also 3D printed a surround for the back wheel, which obviously a bigger radius, and my brilliant drawing there. Does it look exactly like the bit I've done? Let's try that for size. Let's go over. So basically this will fit on there. Now it's slightly wide for a reason, because I was thinking I've ordered another sheet of this stuff because I didn't quite have enough for the inner section, but for a reason I can't quite remember now, I ordered 5mm, and I thought rather than bodging this with it being on the outside, I do a new section using the 5mm and bodge this on the inside, so it doesn't show so much. On the driver's side, I'm not even sure how much inside I'm gonna have, to be honest. I might have a bit, because I'm still thinking of using a bit inside there as a sort of a boot. If I have a little, I've got to check the size, I think it'd be big enough, but like a little hatch here, so I can just stick a crash helmet or something, you know, the shopping or whatever, loaf of bread in there. Yeah, right, so that's, yeah, so that's why that's actually a bit loose, but I think that'll work all right. I don't know, can you see that profile? And if I then coat this with, so this would be all just covered in wrap, but then with this should give this bottom bit along that direction a fair bit of rigidity, and we're going to have these on there which should give it rigidity that way. I might make these a bit thicker for the arches to give it a lot more rigidity, because obviously what I don't want is that flapping around. Okay, so that's all happy. I need to print these in a different colour, don't I, for the back, because I've now got confused as to which ones are for the back, because the ones for the back are a slightly different radius. Oh no, what have I done? Ah, there we go, ADHD in action. Back one. Those are the front ones. So yeah, that will fit around there. I think, see, I was trying to make these really thin so they kind of didn't, you know, so they would sort of profile in. I'm actually thinking maybe I should make these a little bit thicker, or even have a larger in there to give it more stability, that sort of in and out, because what will completely ruin any chance of this working is if this is flopping around. Okay, so that's it fitted on, and I've got the bar across here that will kind of join the side pod to this. I can't have the side pod on as well because at the moment it's too long, but I think that's going to work quite nicely. So that'll be basically held on at the front and behind, so that should keep that from wobbling around. And then this is going to be held on with all those other bits. So I think I'm ready to go to the next stage of this. Obviously I need to clean up that little bit there, a little bit of plastic padding, and then I'm going to use this as a buck. Oh no, I've also got to put a little bit of a curve in here from lessons learnt from before, because obviously we can't do a sharp 90 with the carbon. So I need to just give it a bit of a curve there to make life easier for it. Then once that's done, I'm going to do a couple, I think probably 2 or 3 layers of the GPR and see if it looks okay. What I'm going to do, because I don't really need flapping around with this releasing agent thing, but actually I've done it in the past a long time ago, is just cover this in cling film and use the cling film as a kind of a releasing agent. I don't, because this would then be the, obviously that's going to be the inside of the thing, and that doesn't really matter, does it? So, and that saves me painting on 5 or 6 coats of that stuff that just, on something this big, it's going to take forever, but there's bound to be a section I don't do well enough, and I've got to get 2 pieces off of this, so I don't want the GPR getting stuck to it. One of the really handy things with working for myself from home is jobs like this. I will take my table upstairs to the office I work in, and I can do the GPR in up there where it's a bit more of a controlled environment, but also where it's one of these jobs where you have to do a bit and leave a bit and do a bit, because I've got a whole load of sensors to make at the moment that can be left as I'm making them. I can kind of switch back and forth between the two jobs, which is really quite handy if I was doing a normal job, you know, a 9 to 5 in an office somewhere, or like I used to work on Navy ships. You know, there's no way I could bring this along to work on a Navy ship and start doing some GPR halfway through the morning. With this thing I'm trying to do along the bottom here, obviously part of the reason for it is to try and stabilize this where it's, you know, quite thin and flexible, but it is also trying to do an aero thing. So I've read a few books on this whole aero thing, and I think I've got a reasonable grasp as what's going on, but certainly not a great. So if anybody knows a bit more about this kind of thing, and has any hints or suggestions of how this can be made a better shape, the primary thing is obviously to stabilize that, but secondary to try and keep the air in there, then please put comments down below. Okay, so I'm shifted up to my office, and does this look like a harebrained idea to you that's doomed to fail? I hope not. So that is now covered with cling film, and I'm going to now do the GRP. So I've draped over a nice large piece of GRP, and to hold it in position, because obviously the cling film will move, I can't do the normal thing of painting on a layer of resin and then kind of sticking this to it. So what I've done is I pulled it taut and clipped behind, inspired by those pictures you see of models and things, you know, where they make the dresses fit. Anyway, so it might be another absolute disaster and waste of time, but I'm going to give it a go. That's first layer on. It's sort of gone okay. I've had to adjust my clips a few times. There are a few, I don't know what the correct term is, slightly, I don't know if you can see, slightly wobbly bits here. I don't seem to be able to get those out. Whatever I do, if I get them out there, they just move somewhere else. So the plan is I'm going to let this get so the resin sort of stiffer, whatever you want to call it, stickier, and see if I can smooth them out. If I can't, I think I'll have to leave it like that. I'll probably do the second layer so as I've then got a fairly stable kind of thing, and then I'll have to rub those bits down nice and smooth, because obviously we're putting the carbon top layer on. It's going to reflect whatever's going on below, so I kind of need to have a reasonable layer here. But I think it's gone on okay, apart from those odd little bits. So I'm going to set my timer for about half an hour, and I've kept a little bit of resin still in the pot, so I can check every now and again. I don't know if you can see there at the moment, it's still runny, but when this kind of goes sticky, or even like a sort of almost like starts going a bit sort of jelly like, then maybe I might be able to hold those bits down. Possibly even I might use a section of mylar over there to kind of hold it down or smooth it out. The only problem with this is, of course, it leaves a super smooth finish, which I will then have to rough up anyway for the next layer. But as with all these things, it's me experimenting, it's me with harebrained ideas. So we kind of, you know, suck it and see, really, don't we? One of the many tips you find for GRP stuff, and it's the same with like the plastic padding, people say about the knowing when to stop. And that certainly isn't a thing I've learnt yet. I did, as soon as I turned the camera off, I thought, oh, what's that bit there? I just sort that out, and there's a little bubble there. And of course, what happens is you sort that little bubble out, and then something else happens further down the line, and you just chase around in circles. So I've got to try and be strict with myself here and leave that alone now for at least half an hour. We're about 2 hours later, and it's now almost set. It's that sort of still a bit sticky. So when it's sticky, it makes it much easier to lay on a dry layer, because you can sort of kind of smooth the layer on before then putting resin on. But obviously where these ripples were, I've now put, so there's a little bit of this acetone stuff. That's a clean on that, or whatever the hell that's called, on underneath there, and then obviously clips. So I don't want to put another layer on there until it's hardened, or kind of 90% hard, but I do want to put another layer on. So I'm putting a layer on as much as I can, and then I'm going to leave this a few more hours, so that will be nearly set. So yet again, we're making things up as we go along. Fingers crossed it's going to work out. So we're next morning. Towards the end of the day, I took all those bits off of there and put a second layer on here. So we've got 2 layers of 280. And we do a quick, it's patented, hit it with something and see what it sounds like. Sounds like it's hardened to me. So just thinking now, do I put more layers on the outside now, or do I take it off and see how we are? I think what I'll do is I'll take it off, because before the outer layer goes on, there are some, I don't know if you can see, I think they call them nibs, little bits and bobs. So I need to run the sander across this to make sure I've got a fairly smooth surface for the carbon. And I think it will be stiff enough to hold its shape. I keep saying for this little mid-late bit that I'm going to do talk about something positive about autism and ADHD. Well, here goes. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about independence and kind of getting on and doing things yourself, which is obviously what I'm doing with this kit car. You know, well, so pretty well doing it myself. I am 100% doing it for myself. And with all these things, not everyone with autism has exactly the same traits, and I won't use the word symptoms, but you know what I mean. But for me, independence is quite an important one. If I want to do something, I get on and do it. I get on and do it myself. I don't need to have someone's hand holding mine to do the thing. In fact, it's almost the opposite, where I don't really want people helping. So, for instance, for this project, early on YouTube, I had several people offering me help. And I thought that was great. It's nice to have help. And then when push came to shove, they all evaporated. 2 of the people ghosted me. You know, someone who had a workshop, I was going to be able to use their milling machine and their lathe, just never replied to messages. And these are people who had actually contacted me. You know, they just vanish. It just doesn't happen. So I'm not sure with the independence thing. You know, it's that nature or nurture thing. I don't know whether it's a trait that I've developed over time because I get let down so often, and I think the letting down so often is something to do with me being autistic. So I don't know if I've been born that way, or it's a learned behaviour. Because I've been let down so often, I just kind of get on and do things myself. But there we are. So very short and sweet. A positive autistic ADHD trait is getting on and doing it yourself. I think the ADHD side of things comes into it, because not only is it that I get on and do it myself, it's I get on and do it myself now. Because ADHD, you don't delay, you don't hang around thinking too long about things, you just get on with it. Anyway, there we go. I'm gonna now take that outside, because I'm in my office and I'm getting bits of fiberglass absolutely everywhere, and my posh indoor vacuum cleaner, if it sucks up any more bits of carbon fibre, I got a feeling it might expire and cost me more money than this does in fiberglass and carbon. So catch you in a minute. So the next day, I must admit I did mean to video me getting this off the 3D print thing and completely forgot to take it down with me. I think I mentioned I've got ADHD, and that's one of the fun things of ADHD, is you find doors are sort of portals. When you walk through the door, it completely wipes your mind of anything that you were supposed to remember you were doing. Anyway, so I got it out. It wasn't too much trouble. Managed to do it without cutting my hand open again, which is always good news. And I've now given the whole thing a layer of that horrible matte, the big thick matte stuff. And I'll try and show you one-handed. It's now really quite stable, so it's certainly plenty strong enough. I also, because that matte won't go around sharp corners, on the base bit I've given it one more layer of the 280 weave, because obviously one thing I don't want it doing is breaking away there, because that's going to be the main attachment point. So I'm fairly happy with that at the moment. It needs trimming up. So the next job on this is going to be to clean up the outside, so I can then do a layer of carbon and make it look all pretty. It doesn't need a massive amount of cleaning, but obviously I need to get rid of any bits like that and any lumpy bumpy bits that will show through the carbon. I'm not too sure quite how fastidious I need to be, but I think it's, you know, it's a case of it's better to be a bit over the top than not enough. I might even use a little bit of filler in places. Anyway, I've got some work to do first, so let's get some work done, haven't I? And then I'll show you the next bit. So I've given this a little skim over with plastic padding and a rub down, because I'm a bit concerned that this, with the different sort of colours showing through, what I'm going to do is mix up some resin with black pigment in and paint that on first. Let that get nice and sticky, and then put the carbon on top of that using the what's it called, XCP or whatever it is, the really shiny clear resin over the top. Got first layer of carbon on. I said first layer, the layer of carbon on the top, where I've done it in one nice clean sheet. It's looking all super duper. On the front, because of the shape, I had to cut the carbon a few times, and as you can probably see, it looks a little bit like a patchwork cloth. I'm hoping, so to give it a good finish, I need to give it another coat of, where are we? Let's show you the correct one, not that one, this stuff, because it's a nice clear one. So I'll give it another coat, but before I do that, what I will do is I'll just rub down these edges where they're raised a little bit, and then I'm hoping that it will kind of blend in a little bit more. If it doesn't, then that's just a lesson learned. If anyone's watching this who knows about this sort of thing, and can give me some advice, so things like around the curve, where I had one sheet, and obviously around the curve it starts puckering up, so I cut a couple of slits in to you know, so as it wasn't creased up. if there's a better way of doing that, can someone let me know? Again, would be nice if one of the wings looks a little bit better than this. There's a bit of a theme to this video, isn't there, of I forgot to video what I was planning on. Anyway, so I rubbed down all these sort of edges where the bits meet sort of reasonably well. I think I might have been able to do a bit more. Anyway, I did that, and I've now painted on another layer of that stuff. So it just needs to harden off now, but I think it's looking okay. I think that will do. Right, so I'm thinking about these panels as a whole, but certainly these bits here. We said about having the edge bit, but as well as that, I still think they need a little bit of stiffening up. So I've done a tiny little experiment here. So on this piece, I was a bit concerned if I use fiberglass straight on the raw surface that it wouldn't take. It is sort of matte, but you know. So I've done a bit there on a totally normal one, and that one I've roughed up with it was like a 60 grit, just to see. Hopefully if it would take to that, that's great. And what I've found is that as it did really well, and also just one layer definitely gives it added stiffness. So you can see here I can bend that bit fairly easily, and that bit is staying fairly straight. So I think that's what I would do on those side bits, is just give it one layer of that hideous matte all the way along. And probably, I haven't tried, I've got to have a little experiment with a bit of heat with this stuff to get it to hold a bend, you know, like I did for this. Basically these are similar materials, but this is like very thin layer of that with a layer of foam sandwiched. So of course there's a danger, of course the foam kind of falls apart, so I need to be a bit careful. Anyway, once I decided how I'm going to do that, I think on the curved bits as well I will do a little bit of fiberglass just to help it hold its shape a bit better. Not sure if I showed you previously, but that's basically where the headlight would be. And then we've got, with another coat on, I don't know if it'll come out on camera, all these glittery blingy bits, but I quite like it. Right. So that fits in front of the headlight. We'll have a hole there. Obviously this could be better. So if anyone's watching this as a let's see the mistakes Sean makes and I will do it without them. Okay, so the top bit went on nicely. These other bits, I think what I needed to do, it's a bit like if you watch that Sewing Bee program, isn't it, where they match up the, is it weft you call that? Oh, whatever the hell you call it. Obviously what I've done here is I've got, goes down that way, then it goes this way, then it goes that way, which certainly adds to the patchwork effect, which obviously is an effect I don't really want. So I think that's going to be usable. Probably I will give this another light rub down and another coat with that super clear resin, because there are bits when I sort of stroke it, I can feel, especially like there, you might even be able to see, you can sort of still have got, instead of it being smooth, it's got the texture of carbon. But I'm going to get on with other things first, because where I need to get this to all fit in, there's a good chance it might get knocked or things like that. But I'm feeling a bit deja vu-y really with this. Obviously, kind of been at this stage before, haven't I, of having a front end that's sort of nearly there and saying I think it would do, and then I completely redid it again. but I think this would do. So I'm going to wrap this video up at this point. I'll get on with those bits and bobs, and next video will be, I don't know, whatever I decide to be doing. Catch you all later. Bye.